Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan. You can see her right behind me there on the floor. She's, I don't know, got a bone or something. One of her little doggy biscuits. This is another hot take. This is about government oppression and how it's coming. It's here. Before I get into it, let me remind you, I have a BitChute exclusive. It should probably be up by the time you see this. But definitely follow me on BitChute if you haven't. Link in the description. Also, check out my books for sale just in time for Christmas. It's Hollywoke, sequel to Wokeistan. Look at that nice thick book. It's all about the movie industry and how woke it's becoming. It's another satire. And of course, the Pineys. Book 5 is out. Jersey Shore Piney. It's wonderful. You can get these nice hard copies. They came out fantastically. All right, so let's get into it. It supports the channel, by the way. You buy the books and I get some money. This is something the New York City, the NYPD, wished to deploy robotic dog to combat criminals. And this is something that, we used to see back in the 80s when you'd see some movie about some dystopian future. There would be some machine that would just fly around or run around and go, stop, you have violated City Ordinance 125. And, it would kill you or stun you or whatever. But that's what we're headed towards. We're headed towards, the big fat union cops in New York will be sitting in a room like this, and they'll be running the controls of their robot dogs chasing down criminals so they don't have to get hurt, so they don't have to exercise, and so, there's no human interaction. I think what this leads to is less humanity on the police force, because it's much easier to hit a button and zap somebody than it is to do it live in person. It brings us less. It makes us more disconnected as human beings, and there needs to be a human element in policing. This takes that out. Now, I don't think it's completely useless. It's obviously would be useful in certain situations, like if you had a suspect, he goes into a house, he has a gun, or maybe he's got a bomb, or maybe he's got acid, or he's going to light the place on fire, or whatever. You could send the dog in to kind of scope it out to see what's going on. You could also just send the dog up a wall, let's say. I don't know if it can climb walls, but, you could send it in the places where humans couldn't go. So I think it would be useful in many different circumstances. You could also potentially, I don't know how sophisticated it is, but you could have it on patrol, say, at Central Park, right? And then if someone got into trouble, it could run over, and, if somebody fell and broke their leg, it could run over, offer assistance, offer a phone, it could videotape things. But, to actually fight crime, I don't know. I mean, what I just described, I guess, is kind of technically fighting crime, but I worry that this is going to be a substitute. This says, this robot is able to use its artificial intelligence to navigate things in very complex environments, NYPD's Taruz Deepu John said. It's a weird name, Deepu John. This is the department's only robot dog, and during the latest testing phase, it has been used a few times in the field. The existence of the robot came to light in late October after it assisted in a suspect's arrest in Brooklyn. Well, you know what's going to happen once people get used to it. They'll be destroying the dogs. I mean, they'll destroy them. They'll see them coming, and they'll destroy them, which means they're going to start arming them. I don't know if it's armed already. Once they start arming them, then I'll really be against these things. I mean, I don't mind them as long as they're not armed, but yeah, I don't want an armed robot. I especially don't want one that can roam freely, potentially shooting people. I really don't want that. I mean, just watch RoboCop, Ed 209. That's why you don't want it. You know, so, but again, this is part of the dystopian future we're headed towards. Here's another dystopian future thing. Pennsylvania Health Department issues preferred COVID orgy regulations. Wear a face covering, avoid kissing, wash hands often. Always good in an orgy to keep your hands clean, and other things. So, this is from the Department of Health in PA. This is what they're wasting their time on, and this is why I think they're rife with wokeness instead of doing their job. Large gatherings are not safe during COVID-19, but if you attend a large gathering where you might end up having sex, below are tips to reduce your risk of spreading or getting COVID-19 through sex. Limit number of partners. That is definitely referring to an orgy. Try to identify a consistent sex partner. Try to identify. Oh, you're having so much sex. Try to identify one as your consistent sex partner. Just try. Wear a face covering, avoid kissing, and do not touch your eyes, nose, mouth with unwashed hands. At an orgy? Yeah, okay. Wash your hands with soap and water often, especially before and after sex. If soap and water are not available, use alcohol-based hand sanitizer. I think your hands are going to be, and mouth are going to be busy doing other things if you attend an orgy. But, you know, this is part of the woke left. This is a priority for them. Oh, we need rules about the orgies. You can't go to church. Churches, no, we should close them down. They're dangerous. Can't open your business. Oh, they're dangerous. Oh, but you're having an orgy? Well, here's some tips. It's like, what are these people doing? It used to be the total opposite. These, you know, the PA government was so conservative, it wouldn't address anything out of its very narrow purview. And when it did, it couldn't be more, you know, conservative and straight and just conformist, right? Which I miss that now. I genuinely miss that because at least I knew what the hell was going on with the PA government. Now I feel like it's run by a bunch of woke morons that are busy worrying about orgies, the etiquette and orgies for the beer virus, which is dumb. They should not be worrying about this at all. To put out this tip shows you how they think you're living your life. Well, you know, you can't open your business. You probably don't have a job. You're probably waiting for a check. Well, as long as you're going out and having tons and tons of unprotected sex, I mean, really? This is the priority. If you're at an orgy, your priority should be protection from a little thing called HIV. I mean, what about that? You actually put in this a tip or whatever you want to call it, you're actually making the beer virus the top priority above HIV because you don't even mention it. It's like not even a thought. Well, you're getting together and having sex with multiple partners. Who is doing this? I'm sure some people are, but those people should be wearing condoms first. Condoms. Way more important than a face mask. COVID is 99.99% survivable for people 50 and under. 60 and under, let's say. I like to say that because I'm 54. HIV, however, not that survivable. Not that survivable if you get it. I mean, there's lots of drugs, but I don't think it's as survivable. So, and, you know, set aside all the STDs. I mean, look, this is what you're doing. I mean, it's a nightmare. It's a literal nightmare because their priorities are so out of whack. At the Department of Health in Pennsylvania, this is their priority. Majority of Americans worried that governments will retain expansive new powers after pandemic ends. Oh, let me put those worries to rest. They will. They totally want to. They totally expect to. If you don't raise a stink, they absolutely will. I have no doubt that Phil Tyrant Murphy of Goldman Sachs, my governor, not only wants to have the contact tracers trace for the beer virus, but will also eventually get them to do other things too. His government program will never end. Even though he's borrowing money, he was borrowing money before he hired these people. He hired 3,000 government workers to do contact tracing, to call people on the phone about the beer virus. And 70% of people won't cooperate, and he's wondering why. He's wondering why in the day and age of smartphones, that's only 70% of people aren't answering the phone from a strange call. This is our government. He could be doing, my God, he could be spending he could take those 3,000 contact tracers and use them to help people who are on the verge of being kicked out of their apartment, losing their job, losing their business. Instead, he has them bothering people on the phone about the beer virus. Instead, that money, which he borrows, and then we have to pay back the loan. If he moves out of New Jersey, and he can, he's a millionaire. He's lived in Germany. He's got a mansion in Italy and Germany. He could sell his house, and he's a millionaire. He can live wherever he wants, wherever the taxes are good. He's not going to settle in New Jersey. He's not going to, when his career's over here, he'll move right the F out because he doesn't want to pay the taxes here. He'll set up residence elsewhere. The Bushes famously set up residence in Texas. They weren't from Texas. They're from Buntport, Maine. They're from Maine, I believe, and they didn't want to pay the taxes there, so they moved to Texas, where they set up a residence. So they wanted to pay the taxes. That's exactly what Murphy will do. He doesn't care about New Jersey. He'll leave it a wreck. What does he care? If he doesn't get elected, his career's done. He'll have to do something else for the DNC. He'll have to rely on the fact that he did people favors while he was governor here. That'll be his only sort of ace in the hole. He won't care that he did a bunch of damage. He won't be sorry at all. That was to get himself reelected so he could say during the election next year, oh, well, you know, we've only just started. We're building back New Jersey. Yeah, you ruined it. You destroyed it. People are starving. Well, reelect me and I'll give you some crumbs. And maybe you won't starve. Government breaks your legs and hands you a pair of crutches and says, see, I solved your problem. They're worse than the mafia. The mafia, at least, once you pay them back, if you ever can pay them back, they'll at least, you know, throw you a few meatballs. But not the government. Never the government. Cuomo. Here's the signs. Cuomo. Governor Cuomo, you are elected, not our dictator. King Cuomo. Open up state businesses now. If liquor is essential, so are our businesses. Yeah. You can go in any of the big chain stores right now. You can walk around. You got to wear a mask, and they want you to be socially distanced. But they're open 100%. Oh, but if you got a restaurant, sorry. Oh, you got a bar? Sorry. They don't want people to interact. Somebody pointed out on Parler, you know, the 1776, the revolution was planned in bars. Because, you know, the founding fathers were a bunch of drunken rebels. And here's a nightmarish scenario, which we may very well have to face. The Scottish Parliament advances a controversial hate crime bill. And this would basically put hate speech in the law. The Scottish government has committed to amending the legislation to clarify what is classified as abusive behavior and, quote, hate speech. And, they get to define what hate speech is. So what it'll start as, well, you can't say anything nasty about gay people or trans people or racial, and people go, well, I guess that's okay. But see, they get to define it. And then they'll expand upon it. Just like they started on Twitter with, well, we're only getting rid of the real Nazis. Then they got rid of people who seem to be close to the Nazis. Then they got rid of people who were maybe talking to the Nazis. Then they got people who are got rid of people who are alt-right, and well, then because they're kind of Nazis, they would say. Then they got people who are far right. Oh, well, they're probably the same. They're probably the same. That's what they would say. And now, it's just a field day against conservatives. It's left-wingers in places like Twitter and Google and YouTube making the decisions what is and isn't acceptable. And the Overton window keeps shoving left. So that's exactly what's going to happen with a hate crime bill, especially one that's not very specific. There shouldn't be any hate crime bill if you have freedom of speech. Freedom of speech means nothing if you can't protect speech that you absolutely hate. That you absolutely go, oh my God, why did you say that? If you're not, there has to be, you have to protect speech that you're absolutely horrified by. You have to, or you're not for free speech. You're for curated speech. And once you open that door to the government to curate your speech, it's just a matter of time before they find a way to push and push and push until finally, you can't say that about politicians. Oh, wait. It'll start reasonable stuff. Oh, you can't threaten politicians. This is kind of like a threat. But then it expands. Especially when you've got leftists who say speech is violence. I mean, once you get that in government, then you could ban almost anything. Because then it's committing violence against people. So this is what we have to worry about in the United States under a Biden administration, because Kamala Harris will push something like this because she is dumb and she wants more power, more control, and she does not like criticism. She does not. I can just see it in her eyes. She does not like criticism. She is the single worst person to give power to. Absolute worst. If she becomes president, we're in for a nightmare unless the Republicans take back, the House and Senate and just jam her up for 2 years, which could happen. This is just awful. A hate crime bill would just be. And finally, a bit off topic, but I have an update for my election coverage video on BitChute. Don't forget to check it out. I mentioned the DNI report that's coming out on Friday. Fox is reporting that it may be delayed, and and this was mentioned in the rumors I heard, that the intel community is fighting over the assessment and disputing about whether or not China sought to influence 2020 election. So, I think that obviously they did. The only question is how much and what exactly did they influence? I don't know what data they have, but if China's not doing it, then that would be unusual. They're definitely meddling in our elections, just like the Russians probably did too. But the Russians, not as much. They got stuff going on, but it's not like the Chinese. The Chinese, They have been meddling in the elections. They bragged about it. They bragged about it in China. Now, they can brag about it and that not be true, but they bragged about it all the way back to 92. So I think if anybody knows, the intelligence community knows that China already, hands money to the Democrats. They do. There's been scandal after scandal about it. Nothing's ever done, but now we're finally at a tipping point here. Do we stop them now, or do we just keep letting China creep in with their 2 million Chinese spies? That's the big question. And that's what's really driving all this dystopia. Because the CCP, they would love an 80's dystopia. They're the stars of 80's dystopia. And they'll have robots on every street. They'll have a social credit score. And it will not be free. We will not be free.